From Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida, you are watching live coverage of the launch of the SpaceX Commercial Resupply Services Mission 6, or CRS-6, on its way to the International Space Station today. This is Falcon Launch Control, and we are at T-minus 1 hour, 2 minutes, 45 seconds, and counting. Liftoff is targeted for an instantaneous launch window at exactly 4:33 and 16 seconds p.m. Eastern Time. And at the time of launch, the International Space Station will be flying about 257 miles above the Earth over northern Turkey near the Black Sea. Our weather forecast today calls for a 60% chance of favorable weather with a chance of violating the anvil cloud and cumulus cloud rules. We'll be standing by for a weather briefing shortly to update the status. Today will begin the 6th of 15 SpaceX missions under the modified SpaceX Commercial Resupply Services contract with NASA, and it will be the 7th trip by a SpaceX Dragon spacecraft to the space station. The Dragon, poised atop the Falcon 9 rocket here at Space Launch Complex 40 on Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, is filled with more than 4,300 pounds of supplies and payloads, including critical materials to support science and research investigations that will occur during expeditions 43 and 44. After about 5 weeks at the space station, the Dragon will return to Earth. That's scheduled for May 21st, and it will be bringing back cargo, including crew supplies, hardware, and computer resources, science experiments, and space station hardware. The Dragon is the only operational vehicle today that can return cargo from the International Space Station, so it is a very valuable asset. Fueling operations have been underway. The RP-1 kerosene has been fully loaded, and launch controllers are just finishing the liquid oxygen loading. You can see the puffs of gaseous oxygen vapor coming from both the first and second stages of the Falcon 9 rocket. Today's countdown has proceeded well to this point. Managers are working no technical issues. Launch director is Ricky Lim. The launch conductor is Brian Childers, chief engineer is Hans Koenigsmann, and our launch weather officer is Mike McAleenan from the U.S. Air Force 45th Weather Squadron, and he'll be providing us with a weather update now.
This is ELWO with the 1 hour range weather briefing. Looking at your video monitors, you should see an enhanced infrared satellite picture of the southeast United States. See extensive thunderstorm activity has occurred in central Florida, mostly on the west side of the peninsula, and is migrating towards the east side. We expect that to continue to move into our area and be in the east side of the peninsula after T0. Up to the upper right third of your screen, you can see a white cursor is indicating the approximate location of the first stage landing. So they have found themselves in a kind of a dry area between two stronger areas of cloud cover, so looking pretty good there for landing as far as sea states and cloud cover is concerned. Looking in a little closer, you can see we're seeing those big anvil clouds and thunderstorm activity on the west coast moving across, but right now we are violating no constraints, and we are monitoring the cloud cover a bit closer to us along just west of western Brevard County, eastern Orange County. We had some thunderstorm activity. You can see that on our intercloud lightning detection. You can see just west of the Titusville area, we had some activity that did indicate some lightning, and we had some anvil clouds fly off of that thunderstorm, and on the radar you can see that a little bit better. Those have since dissipated. We do have a big complex of thunderstorms that are just about 25 miles west-southwest of the pad. That would be the area of concern for the next hour as we watch those anvil clouds continue to stream from west to east. They have been thinning and dissipating as they get about 20 miles away from the parent cells, and we expect that to continue, and that bodes well for not having a violation at T0, but that's what we're looking for. Here at a little bit closer, we're looking at the upper level winds, and we have seen very little change throughout the count from the 10Z morning sounding to the latest release of the balloon at 1730Z. Winds are all below 57 knots or so, and that's up at 55,000 feet. So expect no change in the next hour or so. Looking at pads, wind at the pad, you can see we've had that sea breeze kick in, and we're looking at about 14 gusts to 19 miles an hour or so. And I don't expect much of change of that, where wind direction is about 130, 140 degrees. And again, that's a typical sea breeze direction, and don't expect any change as well. Solar weather has also been behaving. Expect no change at that as we're heading into solar minimum. Everything is well below thresholds. So currently, we are go on all range weather and Falcon 9 launch criteria, and expected to remain so for the remainder of the count, pending the activity of that anvils to the south. So our cloud forecast remains scattered. The cumulus clouds at 3,000, 14,000 foot for the blow-off of some alto Q clouds. You can see that on the satellite picture as well, and the 28,000 would be the anvils. Again, winds are staying out of the southeast at 10 to 15 miles an hour. We're watching that cumulus cloud and the anvil clouds as a main concern. If we're delayed 24 hours, winds shift around more southwesterly, and that would tend to help the sea breeze stay right along the coast, pin that east coast sea breeze and impede the western migration of it. That's the trigger for thunderstorm activity. So with that pinned around the coast, we might expect to see more activity locally and not allow that area to move inland. So all the activity that you saw just west of Brevard County would be overhead. So that would violate the cumulus cloud anvil and lightning rules. So there's a 50% chance of that sea breeze and that condition happening for tomorrow. And that's all I have, pending any questions.
Not from us. Thank you.
This is Falcon Launch Control, and as you heard, good news from Mike McAleenan, our launch weather officer. Earlier today, he was describing the weather pattern here in Central Florida and along the Space Coast as summer-like, with the easterly sea breeze developing earlier today along the coast. It moved inland as predicted, and then with daytime heating and the east coast sea breeze colliding with the westerly sea breeze coming from the west coast of Florida, rain and thunderstorms have been occurring inland, and the prediction is that eventually the western sea breeze will overtake the eastern sea breeze and bring the storms back to the east coast here. But the prediction is for that to occur closer to 5 or 6 p.m. Eastern time. And with a liftoff time planned for 4:33, hopefully we will not experience any weather scrub potential, and we'll just become a problem at our exact liftoff time of 4:33 and 16 seconds p.m. Eastern Time. This is Falcon Launch Control. This is Falcon Launch Control at T-minus 54 minutes, 5 seconds, and counting. This is a critical time in the history of American spaceflight as NASA is engaging in a parallel path for human spaceflight exploration. U.S. commercial companies such as SpaceX are providing access to low Earth orbit, and meanwhile NASA is preparing deep space exploration missions to an asteroid and Mars at the same time. The first one-year crew for the International Space Station launched on Friday, March 27th, just over 2 weeks ago. And NASA astronaut Scott Kelly and Russian Federal Space Agency cosmonaut Mikhail Kornienko will be spending just under a year there, living and working aboard the space station. Their one-year mission is very important in NASA's journey to Mars, And let's learn more about that.
Human beings want to go to Mars.
It's a fabulous destination for us to explore. It has so many scientific questions that we could answer, and it might actually be the first place where we find life beyond the atmosphere of our own Earth.
We're already working on what to do when we get there and how to protect the people who'll make the trip.
We're doing quite a bit now, actually, in many different fields, medical, engineering, social sciences, to understand what we have to send people to Mars.
And much of that work is in progress right now on board the International Space Station. Since the first people flew in space, we've been studying how their bodies react in an environment where everything is up in the air, because they're weightless.
You may develop motion sickness. You will definitely have fluid shifts into your chest and head. You will lose muscle strength. You will lose bone strength. You will be receiving radiation that we don't receive on the ground, and we're not sure exactly what that will do. Exercise is a very effective countermeasure. That, coupled with drugs used for osteoporosis, have allowed us to eliminate bone loss in most or all of the astronauts that have done both the exercise and taken the drugs. But there's also the isolated, confined, extreme environment that the astronauts are in. And that's a challenge to the psychology and mental health and performance.
On the International Space Station, we've studied people in the space environment for 6 months at a time. But a Mars mission will take 5 times as long.
Mars missions may take 30 months start to finish. So I don't think it's a bad idea to start getting some longer experience on the International Space Station to give us an idea of what's awaiting us on these future very long flights.
So the station partners are taking the next step. For the first time ever on this vehicle, a pair of crew members is going to space for a year.
My first flight was very rewarding. There are certain times that are, fun. It is very challenging to live on the space station for 6 months. If we're going to go to Mars, we need to understand how the human body reacts in space for longer periods of time.
Человечество по орбите все время летать не будет. Нужно осваивать новые планеты, нужно осваивать Солнечную систему. Это неизбежно. И этот полет как бы первый шажочек вот на этом направлении.
Station science during this year will continue to study bone and muscle weakness and psychological effects. But there are new goals too, like gauging how being weightless for many, many months impacts fine motor skills and restful sleep, and evaluating readaptation to gravity.
After the astronauts land in Central Asia, after the one-year mission, we'll take them into a small tent and ask them to do certain very simple and very routine activities and measure how much they can and cannot do after the long period of spaceflight.
And the crew will use equipment that's already on board to try to quantify the fluid shift that is the prime suspect in vision changes, and maybe do something about it.
Wouldn't it be nice if we could change that fluid distribution in spaceflight and make measurements of the shape of the eye and other function and see if that really is the cause and the effect?
At the same time, Kelly and Kornienko and their crewmates will help with the development of technologies that will need to be improved if future deep space missions are to succeed.
The International Space Station is a test bed. It allows us to test our communications methods, perfect them, so that we know how to handle large delays later on.
Station robotics on ISS are developing tools that are going to assist crew members for future missions, especially long-duration missions to Mars. We're going to assist the crew members by having the robots do the repetitive tasks and also do the tasks that are in the dangerous environment that we don't want to subject our crew members to.
When we go to sit down and finally design the new next-generation regenerative life support for spacecraft to take us to Mars, we'll be able to draw on all the operational experience we've gotten with the space station systems to improve the system and make a more reliable and user-friendly system for the crew.
While fostering international cooperation and providing benefits to people on Earth right now, and serving as a destination for commercial vehicles and research. The International Space Station is enabling future space exploration. The trip to Mars starts right here.
Back live at Space Launch Complex 40 on Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida. You're looking at the Falcon 9 rocket with the Dragon spacecraft on top. 47 minutes, 40 seconds away from liftoff. And the Falcon 9 two rocket stages were transported to the SpaceX Rocket Development Facility in McGregor, Texas for testing several months ago, and then trucked individually here to SpaceX's hangar at Space Launch Complex 40, where the stages were integrated and the Dragon spacecraft was loaded with its cargo. On Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, the final major pre-flight test was completed, static fire, right here on the launch pad, where all 9 of the Falcon 9 first stage engines were ignited for a few seconds with the vehicles held securely to the pad. All the engines performed normally. Today, the Falcon 9 and Dragon were elevated to the vertical position for launch after being loaded late yesterday with the final load of payloads and experiments destined for the International Space Station. The Falcon 9 and Dragon have both been powered up, all their systems activated, the computers turned on. The fueling process has gone well. The RP-1 propellant, which is the rocket-grade kerosene, and liquid oxygen have been fed into both stages of the Falcon 9 rocket. Everything is proceeding normally at this time. We're at T-minus 46 minutes, 13 seconds and counting. This is Falcon Launch Control. This is Falcon launch control at T-minus 43 minutes, 13 seconds and counting. Everything is proceeding normally. The SpaceX launch control team working no major technical issues. Weather remains green. The Center for the Advancement of Science in Space, better known as CASIS, manages the U.S. National Laboratory portion of the International Space Station, facilitating the space-based research as well as creating public awareness of the National Lab research and making space science more accessible to everyone. And we have an update on the CASIS-sponsored research that's flying aboard Dragon that we would like to play for you now. Dragon flies through the blackness of space on its way to a meeting with the International Space Station.
This is the 6th resupply mission by SpaceX to send investigations to the International Space Station. On this particular mission, there are a variety of CASIS-sponsored research projects that are going up, ranging from life sciences, physical sciences, material sciences, some also spanning from the commercial sectors as well. In particular, on this launch, we're going to be focusing on a protein crystal growth experiment by Merck Research Laboratories. Merck is interested in using the space station as a mechanism for better understanding how to develop therapies that can improve life on Earth.
Merck Research Laboratories is conducting crystallization experiments of 2 investigational medicines. This is in collaboration with NASA and CASIS. And in crystallization, the rate at which these molecules come together to produce a crystal affects the quality of the crystal that you get. You know, typically I can perform in a laboratory thousands of experiments here on Earth, but I don't have the same control of the variables that I would have doing experiments on the International Space Station.
In the presence of microgravity, those particles, because they're not sedimenting out, can form over a slower, longer period. And that seems to lead to larger, better quality crystals that we're bringing back from space. The benefits that we're trying to pull out of this research are really benefits for people living and breathing down here on the Earth.
This technology has been used in the fields of HIV, hepatitis C, a number of cholesterol-reducing drugs, and we're just at the beginning of a new era of being able to do biomedical research that improves the overall health of our patients.
So Space Station is an interesting vehicle. It's not only a great platform for a broad range of research and technology demonstrations, it's also a place to learn how to partner together with new and unique users.
And the way you do that best is to develop a business case for corporations and companies to use low Earth orbit for various space-based enterprises.
It's been a pleasure for me to work with CASIS, and it's been an ongoing collaborative process to work out the experiments to the benefit of the research that we're doing.
The role of CASIS is to enable a new era in space-based research on the International Space Station, in particular through the National Laboratory. By working with commercial companies, by working with academia, non-government organizations, we are opening up channels that previously were never available.
What they may learn, hopefully, it will be something very valuable to their business model, which is going to then directly translate into something that could be valuable to humankind. And that's what the National Lab is all about.
This is Falcon Launch Control at T-minus 38 minutes, 9 seconds and counting. Launch Weather Officer Mike McAleenan is updating the team on the current conditions. On the radar, there is a weather system that Mike McAleenan briefed the team on a little earlier off to the southwest of Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, and it's moving steadily to the northeast. It is an item that we're keeping a close eye on because should the green section of the radar return enter into the 10 nautical mile area circle and remain attached to the remainder of the storm with the red highlights, then we could be in danger of violating a couple of the launch commit criteria. So we'll keep our eyes on that and can keep you posted. We are 37 minutes away from launch. The Falcon 9 rocket, as you see it there, topped with Dragon, is 207.8 feet tall and 12 feet in diameter. The 9 first-stage Merlin engines generate 1.3 million pounds of thrust at liftoff, rising to nearly 1.5 million pounds of thrust as the Falcon 9 climbs up through the atmosphere. The Dragon on top is 14.4 feet tall, 12 feet in diameter. The trunk portion is 9.2 feet tall, and with the solar arrays fully extended, it measures 54 feet wide once it's in space. With the launch today, will result in the Dragon spacecraft arriving at the International Space Station on Wednesday, April 15th. Expedition 43 flight engineer Samantha Cristoforetti of the European Space Agency will use the space station's 57.7-foot robotic arm to reach out and capture Dragon at about 7 a.m. Eastern Time. Flight engineer Terry Virts of NASA will support Samantha Cristoforetti as they operate from the station's cupola, and NASA television coverage of Grapple will begin at 5 a.m. Eastern Time. And then coverage of Dragon's installation to the Earth-facing port of the Harmony module will begin at 9:15 a.m. Eastern Time. Ground commands will be sent from Houston for the station's arm to install Dragon on the bottom side of the Harmony module for the approximate 5-week stay at the International Space Station. And after Dragon is attached, by the next day, the crew will pressurize the vestibule between the station and Dragon, open up the hatch that leads to the forward bulkhead of Dragon, and over the next 5 weeks, they will unload the spacecraft and reload it with cargo for return to Earth. Looking forward to an on-time liftoff today, weather permitting, at 4:33 and 16 seconds p.m. Eastern Time. This is Falcon Launch Control. This is Falcon launch control at T-minus 32 minutes and counting. A bevy of engineers and managers across the country standing by today for the liftoff of the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket with Dragon. We're looking at a live view of the SpaceX Launch Control Center here at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, or at Cape Canaveral, Florida, several miles from the launch pad. This team is led by Launch Director Ricky Lim. This is Mission Control Center in Houston. This is the International Space Station Flight Control Room, where activities are monitored around the clock, 365 days a year. They're on console today awaiting the liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket and the next vehicle headed toward the station, Falcon and Dragon. And this is a live view of the SpaceX Mission Control Center in Hawthorne, California. This team is coordinating with the launch control team at the SpaceX Launch Control Center at Cape Canaveral, monitoring the systems for the Dragon spacecraft as well as the Falcon rocket. Everyone eagerly awaiting liftoff of the Commercial Resupply Services Mission 6, CRS-6, to the International Space Station a little more than 30 minutes from now. No technical issues are being worked. Weather continues to be green. We'll keep an eye on the system that is to the southwest of the launch pad and hope that it stays outside of the 10 nautical mile circle. T-minus 30 minutes, 3 seconds and counting. This is Falcon Launch Control.
OSM on the countdown net.
It's OSM.
Yeah, per step 62.2, can you verify the flight hazard area roadblocks are established?
They are established.
Copy.
This is Falcon Launch Control at T-minus 26 minutes, 20 seconds and counting. The primary mission of CRS-6 is to take payloads and experiments and research material to the International Space Station, and some of the work in preparation for that is done at Kennedy Space Center adjacent to Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. We're looking at some of the experiments being prepared and packaged and ready to be taken out to the launch pad. Now, about 4,300 pounds of supplies and payloads will be going up on Dragon, including materials that will directly support about 40 of the more than 250 science and research investigations occurring during the Expedition 43 and 44 timeframe aboard the station. The science investigations include commercial and academic payloads in a myriad of disciplines that include exploring new ways to possibly counteract the microgravity-induced cell damage seen during spaceflight, studying the effects of microgravity on the most common cells in bones, gathering new insight that could lead to treatments for osteoporosis and muscle wasting conditions, continuing studies into astronaut vision changes, and testing a new material that could one day be used as a synthetic muscle for future robotic explorers. The science investigations support numerous human research investigations for the one-year mission as well, and the twin study that will enable researchers to advance their knowledge of the medical, psychological, and biomedical challenges faced by astronauts during long-duration spaceflight, in addition to developing countermeasures that would reverse those effects. And this mission also is delivering hardware to prepare for the installation of the 2 international docking adapters that are scheduled to be delivered on future SpaceX missions and installed to the space station to enable the Boeing CST-100 and SpaceX Dragon crew spacecraft to dock there to the space station. So a very important mission. Everything continues to go well. Weather continues to be green. We're just under 24 minutes and counting. This is Falcon Launch Control. This is Falcon Launch Control at T-minus 20 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. Launch Weather Officer Mike McAleenan just briefing the SpaceX Launch Control team on the status of the weather. And as you can see, the storm cells to the southwest of Cape Canaveral Air Force Station continue to move to the northeast at about 8 knots. And you also can, as you can tell, all of these cells are attached to each other, which causes concern because some of the cells contain lightning, and there are very complicated launch weather rules that call for whenever a storm cell approaches that is connected with one that has lightning, you have to wait 30 minutes before you can launch. We're not in that position yet, but we are hoping that the cell that you were just looking at will dissipate or stay out of the 10 nautical mile circle or become detached from those that are further north of it. Under those circumstances, we should be okay. If that does not occur and this cell does drift into the 10 nautical mile circle, then we may have an issue with weather for today. We will stand by for more information. Once again, at this time, we're go. We're at T-minus 18. This is Falcon Launch Control at T-minus 17 minutes and counting. Everything remains go. We continue to watch the weather. At this time, the front remains outside of the 10 nautical mile circle from the center of Space Launch Complex 40, the launch pad, where the Falcon 9 rocket and Dragon spacecraft reside. Just a little bit more than 16 minutes away from the planned liftoff today. This is Falcon Launch Control. This is Falcon Launch Control at T-minus 15 minutes and counting. Launch team is discussing with Launch Weather Officer Mike McAleenan the status of the weather as the storm cell continues to drift toward the launch pad. The team concurs that we will continue to count down until or unless the storm cell encroaches on the 10 nautical mile circle, at which point a decision will have to be made. We'll be closing in on the terminal countdown soon, with a poll to be conducted by launch conductor Ricky Childers. T-minus 13 minutes, 27 seconds and counting. This is Falcon Launch Control.
T-minus 13 minutes, all stations verified, go for launch. FTS.
FTS go.
Prop. Prop go. AVI.
AVI go.
GNC.
GNC go.
Ground.
Ground go.
VC.
VC go.
GC.
GC go.
RC.
RC go.
OSM.
OSM go.
ROC.
Go.
CE.
Go.
MD.
MD is go.
LD, verify go to initiate terminal count.
LD is go to initiate terminal count. Initiating terminal count and countdown master.
T-minus 12 minutes, 23 seconds and counting.
BC, start the terminal count. Auto sequence set to start at T-minus 10 minutes.
Terminal count is started and countdown master.
BC, start the terminal count. Auto sequence set to start at T-minus 10 minutes.
Copy, started. That's confirmed.
The terminal countdown is set to begin at T-minus 10 minutes, at which point all systems are autonomous. T-minus 11 minutes, 50 seconds and counting, keeping an eye on the weather. So far, the storm cell remains outside of the 10 nautical mile circle. T-minus 11 minutes, 30 seconds and counting.
If a hold is called from this point forward, the terminal count auto sequence will be aborted. Indicate an abort or hold condition by saying hold, hold, hold on the primary countdown net. In this event, the VC will immediately abort the auto sequence. The VC shall not abort the auto sequence after T-minus 10 seconds, and operators shall not call a hold after T-minus 10 seconds. If a hold is called, all operators proceed to the terminal count abort steps in section 10.64.
T-minus 10 minutes, 30 seconds and counting.
Attention all personnel, stand by to pick up the count. T-minus 10 minutes and counting on my mark. 3, 2, VC announce the auto sequence has started.
Terminal count auto sequence has started.
GCVC standby on FireX.
Standing by. Standing by.
LD start the tracking camera video recorders.
Nord. Spin and T-Tab final setup starting.
OSM set launch enable to flight.
Flight. Stage 1 engine chilling in.
T-minus 9 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. Mission controllers in Hawthorne, California, standing by for today's liftoff. This is the SpaceX Mission Control Room. We're approaching T-minus 9 minutes.
T-minus 9 minutes.
Working no technical issues whatsoever. And watching the weather. Storm system to the southwest, slowly creeping at 8 knots toward Space Launch Complex 40. So far, still staying outside of the 10 nautical mile circle. T-minus 8 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. Coming up on the T-minus 8 minute mark.
T-minus 8 minutes.
Nitrogen ACS closeout starting. Stage 2 FTV motions.
T-minus 7 minutes, 31 seconds and counting.
Stage 1 heaters closing out.
T-minus 7 minutes.
Standing by for both Falcon stages 1 and 2 to go to internal power.
Stage 2 heaters closing out.
T-minus 6 minutes, 30 seconds and counting.
Vehicle switching to internal power. TVC blade stage 2 has started.
Thrust vector control for stage 2 has started. This maneuvers the engine for steering. There's a checkout to ensure that all works well. Standing by to pressurize the tanks in preparation for strong back retract.
T-minus 6 minutes.
Tanks pressing for strong back retract. Hydraulic cradle open sequence has started.
The strong back will slowly move away from the Falcon 9 rocket.
RP1 bleed stage 1 starting.
Everything is go. Coming up on T-minus 5 minutes.
T-minus 5 minutes.
T-minus
RP1
4
bleed
minutes.
stage 2. TVC motions on stage 2.
T-minus 4 minutes.
Strong back retract started.
30 seconds and counting. Everything remains go. Weather remains outside of the 10 nautical mile circle.
T-minus 4 minutes.
Strong back is retracted. Just under 4 minutes and counting.
Stage 2 tanks venting. GNC verifies good stage 2 TVC motion.
Standing by for the flight termination system to go on internal power.
Strong back fully retracted.
Strong back is fully retracted at T-minus 3 minutes, 30 seconds and counting.
Hold. This is LWO. Weather is no-go for the attached anvil cloud rule.
And Launch Weather Officer Mike McAleenan calling a hold.
This is MIPCO on CDNet. MIPCO, no go due to weather violation.
Issuing terminal count abort.
The Mission Flight Control Officer also calling a no-go.
Issuing terminal count abort.
Computer's not in startup.
Flight computer's not in startup.
CE set the warning space to terminal count abort.
And we've officially
OSM,
struck for the day.
verify rated safety FTS and report. OSM.
Rated safety FTS.
OSM set launch enable inhibit.
Inhibit.
BC verify Dragon has aborted and is in a stable configuration. DC countdown net.
DC on countdown net. Dragon terminal count has aborted. Flight computers are in manual.
Copy, you're in a stable configuration.
Yes, sir.
GC verify stage 1 and stage 2 locks and RP interface fill manifolds are vented.
Verified.
GC verify water systems are secure.
Verified.
GC verify TVC tank is vented.
Verified.
GC verify TTEP system is secured.
In work.
OSM ready to safe FTS.
Ready to safety FTS.
Safing FTS. GC prop AVI LC, are you ready for strong back raise?
GC's ready.
Prop is ready.
AVI is ready.
This is Falcon Launch Control. Just about as close as we could get with a hold called at T-minus 2 minutes, 39 seconds by the Launch Weather Officer Mike McAleenan when, as expected, a storm cell containing anvil clouds attached to a larger storm cell moved within 10 nautical miles of the launch pad here at Space Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida. And as you can see, the launch commit criteria spelled out. Everything was go except for the attached anvil cloud rule, which was violated again with 2 minutes and 39 seconds left in our count today. The rule specifies that we may not launch within 10 nautical miles of an attached thunderstorm anvil cloud unless the temperature and time associated distance criteria can be met, and those were not able to be met. Unfortunately, the west coast sea breeze won today and pushed back storms that had formed when the East Coast sea breeze and West Coast sea breeze collided inland. This weather pattern is very summer-like and very unusual for Central Florida and the Space Coast in April. Unfortunately, it's the hand that we were dealt today. Plans are to come back for a 24-hour recycle and launch tomorrow. Tomorrow, the liftoff time would be at 4:10 p.m. Eastern Time. Unfortunately, the weather forecast is not much better for tomorrow. In fact, the official forecast is slightly worse, with a 50% chance of go weather or acceptable weather tomorrow, with a possibility of violating the cumulus cloud rule, the lightning rule, and the anvil cloud rule. Tomorrow, the low-level flow, as opposed to today, where at the beginning of the day it was southeasterly, tomorrow it will turn more southwesterly, as it has been this afternoon, which resulted in the storm clouds moving back into our area. With the flow turning southwesterly tomorrow, it might impede the westward migration of the sea breeze, which will keep the thunderstorm triggering mechanism much closer to us here at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, which increases the risk for lightning, cumulus clouds, and the anvil cloud rule violations. So once again, tomorrow's liftoff time will be 4:10 p.m. Eastern Time, with a 50% chance of favorable weather. Our NASA television coverage will begin at 3 p.m. Eastern Time for the attempted launch tomorrow of SpaceX CRS-6 mission. So with today's launch opportunity scrubbed due to weather and the plan to come back and try again tomorrow, we will end our broadcast on NASA television, and once again we will pick it up again tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And between now and then, you can keep track of any milestones that may occur by going to the web and following us at www.nasa.gov/SpaceX. And this concludes our NASA television coverage.